Welcome to the Squarebase Show, a video about a roadmap to the future or a look at the past. It's Square-based.
This one's more of a map.
It's a map. I tried to, as you well know, to come up with some more map-based puns in the intro, but I couldn't find the direction.
Well, that's unfortunate because this is an orienteering episode. We are trying to find the true north of the old world here.
It's true. Listen, if you are watching this, it's an incredibly exciting time because Games Workshop have just updated the map for the old world. Now, many of you might say, Rob and Val, come on, you've already done a couple of shows where you're like Cathay and stuff. And I know. Mm-hmm. We've got a deep dive in the pocket. We're going to do High Elves very soon. We've got the amazing old world Squarebase survey. I don't think that's its name, but whatever it's going to be, which you'll get to find out about soon, which is going to be very cool. But for now, this is news that if this had come out in that kind of lead up to the old world, that year of shows we did beforehand, we'd have maybe spent a month on this. Huge news.
We'd still be talking about it. So we might as well catch up to our potentially past selves. Because some really cool stuff is going on.
Yeah, so on
Ye Old World.
Yeah, on the website, yeoldworldwebsite.com, I think that's its name. It's theoldworld.com, so you can find it here. There is an interactive map, so you can zoom out, you can zoom in, you can click some stuff, which is quite cool, and you get some information. And this has been around since the kind of launch of the game. But Monday, Tuesday this week, they have updated it. And in this incredibly handy video I'm about to play that Val's made, you can show what's been added. So significant amounts to the north and the south, as well as a cornucopia of new locations and heraldry, which we're going to kind of break down in order, right? But Val, as like a first pass, one of the things we talked about when we talked about Cathay, or a lot of the comments when we talked about Cathay, people were saying, lads, we're in the Border Princes, and that's what you said. You were like, we're in the Border Princes. You're going to have to expand outside the Border Princes if you're going to want to involve more stuff. Mm-hmm. Do you feel this is a retaliation to that?
Perhaps this is the scope to which they referred was changed.
The scope has expanded, and it's specifically the map scope. Okay.
This map, they were able to unlock a new tier on their map drawing Kickstarter, and added the Chaos Wastes. I actually was flailing around for different map references, because obviously you could buy the printed map at one point. I don't know if that's still a thing.
You can have the map throw
blanket.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Blanket. You can get a displate version of the map. Which is actually I've been tempted by. I like a good dry mount, and you don't get more dry mount than metal, but we're not sponsored by them, so I don't know why I plugged it. Regardless, and then there's the rule book, and the rule book, when you actually go into it, is that very zoomed in Border Princes cut of the map. Of course, we've seen other versions. There's other cutouts for like Kislev, I believe there's a version of that's somewhere. And in the Arcane Journals too, we're getting zoom ins on different parts of the map. But this is our global map. This is the Total War experience map. Those of us play Total War, that was a big deal when they stitched everything together and you could play the entire old world.
Yeah, the Immortal Empires campaign. Yeah. It's absolutely worth talking about that, because this map still is not the size of the Immortal Empires map. There's absolutely tons missing, especially as we go to the west. Ulthuan isn't there. We don't have anything of like where the Lizardmen are. We don't Nagaroth and all that region for some reason right now. Even Lustria, thank you, is missing. On that left-hand side, so left-hand side of the map. So we got tons missing right now, which is. But seeing it expanded is super interesting, because, like Val said, maybe this is the scope, but also this is absolutely set the rumor mills and also the speculation mills on fire, because there's huge kind of implications for the expansion of this map. I got to say, if I was to take a wild guess. Well, you and me have talked about there being a second edition, maybe Jan 2026 or something similar to that. Yeah. I said to you on a call earlier, I'm like, I think this is just the map. They're like, we need the map for the new rule book. What's going to be in it? This is going to be this is the new map for the new rulebook. Basically, is what I think. What do you think about that take?
I'm hoping it's a bigger map. I'm hoping that this is the new map based on the roadmap that was revealed, which included Grand Cathay, and also, I mean, the reveals on this and on that little transition header. I don't know where in the world do we want to go to first, because we can start dicing it up. Where are we going?
I think maybe the hot topic. So let's deal with the hot topic right now, which is definitely it's the Dogs of War, right? So it's Tilea and Estalia. I'm saying that wrong, I'm sure. Yes, thank you. So it's basically Spain and Italy for everyone, which is quite funny, because I think it's insane that there isn't really like a Spanish representation in medieval the medieval fantasy game, right? Like that's odd. Same with Italy as well. Like so integral to so much of of wars and stuff in the past. But yeah, this region, which is it's two different nation states, has had a huge amount of like heraldry added for the different kind of like, you know, principalities and stuff, which is fun. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I mean, one of the classic reasons for the death of Warhammer Fantasy was that there wasn't enough narrative space. They didn't have enough places that they could take their grand vision, and that's why they needed to, you know, not be locked into what is a map of planet Earth. And I always joke that, like, you don't have enough stories from all of the history of human civilization.
Correct.
So that was always a bit of a red herring to me. And this, I think, really highlights why. So these are areas of the map in Warhammer Spain and Warhammer Italy that I think, you know, certainly in Warhammer Fantasy roleplay have been mined a lot for setting and for, you know, characters and things like that. And, you know, I definitely think that they've appeared in lore, but in game, you know, we saw Dogs of War, which was a fifth edition supplement, and then a sixth edition. I think all they really did was a White Dwarf article. Was all that they did bring that army book in, but they never went back to it, despite it being like, you know, that one is based more on the Warhammer Italians, and has, you know, so a lot of that sort of Renaissance mercenary vibe to it, and a lot of, you know, potential for wacky inventions and machinery. The greatest inventor of the Empire, the guy who made the steam tank, comes from this region. So there's lots of cool opportunities to tell stories and do fun stuff, and it's as yet fairly untapped on the tabletop. So to see this fleshed out with lots of cities and places and like you say, heraldry that we can't. There's nothing that you can actually click on yet.
Yeah, no clicks.
To find out about, I think gives us just such amazing world building potential, don't you think?
Yeah, so I think just for people who, and I'm sure there's a ton of people who are new, like I was saying, 5th edition, there was an army book with a collection of, if you play Total War, what eventually becomes really regiments of renown, and different, like you could build it as your own army, but you could also take regiments of renown, which has become like a very famous thing. And maybe regiments of renown actually appeared earlier, but it was like, you know, in White Dwarfs or wherever they would have been. But it was definitely when you could play with regiments of renown, and there was like a whole host of famous regiments of renown, some of which, like Golfgag's Man-Eaters as an example, which eventually gets expanded out into, you know, the ogre kind. I mean, not just that, it wasn't that, but they're also featured in the ogres and stuff, which I think is quite cool as well. So there's lots of story here, and it's because if you kind of look at the map, basically north of Italy and Spain is where many of the stories kind of happened. And if you did end up with those like those units or those famed ones, it's because they came north as mercenaries, really, to battle. So yeah, I think it's super cool. I would say, I don't know how I feel about this, so I'm going to make a bit of a statement. I would really like to see both of these two nations get their own book. Like I'm excited for Dogs of War 2. I completely understand, and I do like the idea that these are a series of mercenary states really battling against each other, but also the Empire kind of is in this timeline as well. Sure. So I wouldn't mind seeing these fleshed out to be their own take on on Empire, like, Italian Empire versus the more kind of like Franco-German Empire that we get from the Empire. I think that'd be interesting. It's cool. Like, what it definitely means is the excitement factor through the roof is working on developing and expanding. Like, we're not just getting these 9 core factions. We're already absolutely resolute set on Cathay. And now they're saying, hey, by the way, like, because the Cathay rumor drop was intentional, right? It's not like a leak. It's like, by the way, this is also intentional. No one asked them to update it, but someone's gone, update the old map. So like they've given us more spice. And I think that's really, really exciting because it means there's lots of development happening. There's loads of work happening. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. You had an interesting take as well, because one of the things I'm really excited about is Sartosa, which is down in the south here with Sicily. There's a big pirate ship above it. And obviously Sartosan pirates would be a super cool faction, maybe a cool regiment of renown, maybe a cool army of renown, whatever it might be. But this isn't new to the map, right?
So the pirate ship isn't new, but they have actually named and placed Sartosa, which everyone would know that sort of island off of Tilea was Sartosa, but they've actually put the name and place on it. And the town or the city of Sartosa is now on there. But the pirate ship has always been there. So that's kind of cool. Maybe we just didn't notice it, or maybe they were hinting at Sartosians previously. These are not, of course, the Vampirates. This is not the Vampire Coast. That's over in Lustria. I think just an easy layup of a faction they could add someday because of everything we saw in Total War and the awesome, how cool they are. But yeah, those pirates are one thing. The other is that like we do have through the Dogs of War, Warhammer Army book and other stories a fair insight into sort of the Tilean peninsula. It's not unified. It's more like the sort of Renaissance Italy, warring city states, from my general and vague understanding of it. What I don't know is super fleshed out, and this might be mostly through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, is Estalia. So that one I think is not quite as defined. And I think perhaps the saddest empty spot on this area of the map might be in the Blighted Marshes. Because as many of us would know, that's where Skavenblight's supposed to be.
Yes. Here. Currently, the Blighted Marsh is blighted because it's full of Skaven. But as they are a legend/renegade faction, not currently allowed on the map. So, I mean, it looks foolish without them, right? Like, it does seem really silly. But, it's really hard to think they're not going to eventually throw that in there. That seems wild.
Yeah, they've got to, and the space is still there. One thing that I really enjoyed, especially when you overlay the old map to the new, is just sort of adding, the roads and the forests and the specific towns and villages. It really just gives, it gives this place like a much more lived-in feel, and that world building is a big deal. One thing that I really loved about Total War, especially on that Immortal Empires map, is the relationship of different legendary lords, but also sort of where the factions physically live on the map dictates who they're nearby.
Yes.
And so that,
if you're going to do orcs and goblins, you got to be fighting some dwarfs early. It sucks.
Right. But I just mean like now, like the idea of Britonia not having a whole lot of history with Estalia, as would be likely, and there being many stories to tell about whatever's going on between those two kingdoms, is that's just a big open canvas for people to invent themselves or for Games Workshop to develop. It'd be real interesting to start seeing, especially from some of the lore sections, what's already out there about these particular areas, because I'd say for the gamers of the tabletop, this has just been a big old void. To the south of it, to the south of it is, of course, Araby, Warhammer Northern Africa.
Yeah.
And that has actually, I think south of this area, nothing did change that I could spot.
No.
Maybe hit me in the comments if there was any subtle changes. But maybe they added some things that you could click on. But as far as actual additions to the map or changes to the map, I don't think there was anything in the Land of the Dead or the Badlands or Araby.
Yeah, I do wonder how ridiculous that they would be willing to go. Would we see a faction from, Araby as an example, or would it just be Empire, but they would have very different hats? Like it's an upgrade kit, but it's basically the same. Like that could be a way to go with it, which I don't think is what we're saying is with Cathay, a human faction, really. Mm-hmm. Do you want to then add human Spain, human Italy, human North Africa to the map? Because I think a lot of people would say, I'm not too sure, which is a good kind of segue to us being able to discuss the fact that actually it wasn't just the south that they expanded out, they also expanded out in the north, in the Chaos Wastes, which is quite fun. And if you have watched our lore video, you remember that we mocked furiously for its impossibility to be impossible, and therefore where are the roads and who's bringing in all of the salt,
the logistics of the north. We're making us scratch our heads, but perhaps we have some insight. Into that.
Yeah, so you've got the Chaos Waste over at the top, and then like a variety of different kind of like waypoints, and they are all differently colored as well. So like maybe this is Khorne, maybe this is more Tzeentchian, as an example. I got to say, even though I think this was already on the map previously, I'm just still thrumming with excitement for the Nation of the Hobgoblin Khans.
Okay. Yes, I think maybe they modified the name of it a little bit.
I think maybe they modified the name. Let's just go check our overlays, or maybe you've got like a master overlay.
No, actually, they were the Nation of the Hobgoblin Khans. They were there.
Yeah, I think they were there already. But I'm just really excited about that. Very excited, especially we were just talking about the Dogs of War, because one of the Dogs of War warbands was actually from the north, the Unggols, and that was one of the Dogs of War units you could get for some berserker kind of like Norscan men. And you've long been thinking Norsca's an easy layup.
Yeah, well, I think Norsca, as defined from Warriors of Chaos, separated. They are, again, in the beginning of the Old World rulebook, separated out as sort of amongst the other factions. So like the 9 core factions that were brought back are described, and then they also do Norsca, Kislev, and Cathay. So that implies, since we're seeing Cathay coming, that perhaps Norsca is meant to be one of the core factions as well. But we don't know. We haven't seen any speculation about that. You did use to mention a lot the idea of a plastic war mammoth being out there somewhere.
Yeah, I heard this. I heard this rumor a lot. Like enough that I'm like, someone somewhere is getting a mammoth. Don't know if it's Age of Sigmar. Don't know if it's the Old World. And I heard that. And if that's real, that would be wild as well. What did you take away from the expansion of like this northern area?
Well, one is Chaos coming into focus, so that's kind of that's a very big deal. Chaos has been, very understated, I think, so far, both in the army book itself as just essentially being very focused on being just a raiding culture or civilization that's coming down and causing trouble. The one interesting thing from the lore in the Warriors of Chaos book is that they have, sacked a town, or I can't remember the name of it, but that poor town that, like all foolish northern settlements, kept rebuilding and has a port for them to dock their ships on. But at any rate, they stayed. Like that's what's making Friedel a little bit different, is that she's made a shrine and stayed. So that encroachment of Chaos and being a bit more permanent and present in the setting is definitely reinforced by this, because of the ultimate end is to get to the Great War against Chaos, which would require fleshing out a lot of this. One thing up here that's really kind of neat, and another faction that's hinted at with their appearance on here would be the Norse Dwarfs.
Yes. These are further north, aren't they? They're over here somewhere.
They're literally in Norsca, just above that red bear paw of Kislev. You can see a little Karak Drak.
Cracker Drac, one of my favorites.
Orange smoked thing. Crack.
Yeah, now I wouldn't be surprised by this. So this is kind of interesting because we're getting into the territory now where we're talking about a lot of factions. I'd like to talk about that after. But yeah, I could see this being something they could easily write the story for, give us a regiment of renown, not regiment of renown, an army of infamy for. Yeah. And then immediately you've opened up like a different type of play style. Maybe go for like some berserker style dwarfs as well. Super easy to do. Really expanding out that kit so it's very playable. And this is, I think, one of SDS's skills and talents, because SDS, the Horus Heresy, they're like, here's a plastic kit, you can build it as 17 different armies, sort of a thing, or whatever it might be. And I feel like that makes a lot of sense. It's something main studio would never think to do. And it's something I think SDS, will be like, yeah, that's really, really, really possible that we can kind of blow this out and expand it, which I think would be super fun. Maybe that's a bit of a nod to the fact Chaos Dwarfs, they don't want to be in it. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to cover that base. Not sure. But yeah, that's very cool. What do you think about it?
I think, especially like an arcane journal, which, focuses on the faction, maybe takes the existing dwarf lineup that we have. You could just maybe add a couple kits that are able to be mixed and matched with existing dwarf kits to give them a Norse flavor, and off and running. You've got a different version of dwarfs that you can explore in a totally different context to their southerly neighbors. And again, it's just sort of, it's really fun world building, and nothing stops you from doing that right now. If you want to go with your, maybe these guys don't have gunpowder. Maybe you like the non-gunpowder style, technologically less advanced or suspicious even versions of dwarves. Perhaps, basing them up here is a great thing. And Highlands Miniatures has some really great Norscan dwarves. Dominates with their Norscan dwarf.
They do. Okay, so I think that's all of the regions generally. It's kind of generally covered. Yes, I think so. But the big question for me here is, this seems insane. That's what I'm going to say. And I'm sure people who are watching this are saying to themselves as well, no. They've just updated a map. And I'm like, but why? They have no reason to update a map. That's such an important thing to say. Games Workshop is not a company that just does stuff because they just do stuff. They do stuff because it's part of a product release. That's how they do things. Yeah, someone is working on this for a product release. So are we truly saying potentially hobgoblins, potentially more chaos stuff, potentially more dwarfs, potentially dogs of war, Cathay, maybe even Araby? Is that all on the table now, do you think? Do you think we're being too pie in the sky? Or do you think this is definitely what they've... Because, what do you think? And, and to everyone in the comments as well. Let me know what you think.
I would say, I think this absolutely is still maybe tipping their hand to the direction that they want to take things. By the way, we did miss one big addition, which is that instead of there being a dragon, like a sea monster out by Marienburg, there's now a Cathayan, dragon ship.
Yep.
I'm not sure, a junk. Would be its real world version. So perhaps they're emissaries or people coming to talk to Marienburg. That is one of the biggest trading ports in the Empire. But to get to your point, I would think that this is a directional take for the old world. But this does feel to me to be present old world, as in the version of the game that we're playing with right now. To me, and maybe I'm wishing for that, because there are lots of things not on this map that I would, of course, dearly love to see. Some very key factions, although vampires are hinted at on this map. We don't see any hints of, obviously, Skaven, Lizardmen, Chaos Dwarves. I think some of their cities are listed. The Plain of Zar is there. Is the Dark Citadel a Chaos Dwarf thing?
The Dark Citadel? I don't think so.
At any rate, there's no ogres. Ogres, of course, natural foe of Cathay. If we're fleshing out Cathay, one would hope to see ogres at some point in the future. However, there are 1, 2, 3, at least 3 new factions, like Norse Dwarfs, Tilea and Estalia being established on this map are guys not even referenced in the book explicitly, as far as I know. So that speaks to maybe the direction they want to expand the game rather than to some of those older legacy factions, and maybe this is the vision for like you say the next phase of the game. But yeah.
I think people are going to be. I mean, this is great. This is exactly what I think the game needs as well. I think the nod to Cathay, that we saw from the timeline, is truly like that's really cool because they're like, hey, we're doing something else. I know there was loads of people who are like, I'm upset that my lizardmen won't be in it, but Cathay will be. And then we're having that conversation again. My vampire counts or lizardmen aren't going to be in Old World, but you're going to get like Araby, like make it make sense. And I'm with you 100%. Like that's internal Games Workshop politics, which is really silly and it's affecting our game. But as me and Val have said, supporting those things are things that we're super keen to do in the future anyway.
Absolutely.
So now we're seeing the Old World expanded out. And like with this and Total War, I feel like that's 2 different departments. I know it's not a department, they're 2 different companies in 2 different projects, but it's still the Old World being like pretty heftily worked on for like map freaks. And I don't know if you know this, but if you are playing the Old World, you're probably a map freak.
You gotta love maps.
You gotta love maps. So I think this is a really exciting time to be an Old World player. I think people are going to be very pumped. This is huge, I think.
Yeah, and I don't mean to Debbie down it at all. This is like super exciting because these are also things that we have genuinely never really seen before. And again, as far as the depth of the potential for this setting, which has always been talked about as being very hemmed in, very boxed in, that's just because they never bothered to fill in the map. So here we go. We're filling in the map. And hopefully we continue to see that expand outwards. And, because once you plop Cathay down, once you expand this map east, well, that's going to raise more questions. You got Nippon out there, Koresh. There's Ind. There's all kinds of other factions, and yes, humanoid perhaps, but again, to say that that's other humans are boring, you can draw on the history and the mythology and all of those inspirations to create really, really cool factions in this setting that just has up until now, in 40 years, really have been left untouched. So that's I think a really cool opportunity.
I'm with you 100%. Like you give me pirate humans, I'm like, cool. Like that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. So so you can give me that. Yeah. And I think that there's if this is the scope has expanded, then the scope seems to be massive. And if the scope is this massive, I'm really excited. Like I'm already, I can't be more excited for the Old World. Like there wasn't anything. I was done. I was like, we're getting new books this year. We're getting new models. Might be getting. Well, we're gonna get a new army. I was like, you don't need to gild this lily, my friends. And then like to drop this 22 days into January. Whew, that's exciting. And I think maybe also a nod to say, hey, this game's going to be around. We're going to do some stuff. I think maybe also that as well. Interesting signal.
Yeah, so far there's nothing but green lights as far as I can tell. There's nothing signaling to me that this game is not something that they're going to lean into. And SDS, if there's one thing that they do, it's that they support their games. The games that they do take on so far have been heavily supported. And once we are through those, maybe this is in fact. We've only gotten but a tasty appetizer for what's to come because, once those core factions are on the table and the old models are out, well, now we're into the new game. And that's actually that's super exciting because it's no longer just a black box. That was a big point of nervousness for me. Where do they have an idea of where they want to go? And now they're hinting at places they might. And that's super awesome and exciting.
Yeah, and slow roll to some other places as well. Very much so. Like we said, everything in the Western continent, Ulthuan and stuff. So if you've enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below. Thanks to everyone on Patreon. There's so much to comment on here. If we miss some stuff, I'm sure we miss some things. Let us know. We can only learn and get better. More of us talking about it. So drop it in the comments. Excited to read about it. I know earlier today and yesterday I was reading about Tileans, and I was like, whoa. This is fun.
Actually, that's a great one for the comments. Hook us up with some of your favorite like resources about some of these things that maybe aren't front and center in the lore, like Estalia especially. What are the best? What has been developed so far about Estalia? It's not even touched in Total War. Tilea, fantastic. The Norse Dwarfs, what are they all about? Let's start. The comments educate me every single time, correct me, but also I learn stuff every single time. So please do hit us up.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.